Welcome back to the Balance Breakdown, folks. Ian O'Neill, Harry Powell back in your lives. Better late than never is what they say. We're one day late here. Work commitments on my side kind of helped me back a little bit, and work commitments are going to see us record a rather snappy episode of the Balance Breakdown because we got to get this man across from me into bed a little bit earlier tonight as well. Harry, how are you doing, good sir?
I'm well now, thank you. I'm very angry at Sean Sheehan, who
Yes, his fault.
has passed me over his bout of flu. So we're fuck the Sheehans today. It's usually we're yup the Sheehans, but today it's definitely fuck the Sheehans. But fair play to him altogether. He's managed to get over his and then pass it all the way over to me, and for him to do that across the Irish Sea, fair play to him.
Fair play to him. That's a strong dose, as they say. It must have happened in that omnibus edition of Speaker's Corner as well, I would imagine. So heal fast. Let's get straight into it. Rose Namajunas, Amanda Ribas went to battle in the main event of the UFC Vegas 89 card at the UFC Apex this past weekend. We're going to head straight in and break down that card. My initial thoughts on the fight itself is something that we've seen and is quite a common trend with Rose Namajunas is she doesn't quite look the old style of Rose Namajunas. Now, I will bring that question to you, Harry, because I think you'll answer it much better than I can speculate. Why do you think that is? And do you agree that she does not look the fighter that she once was? We can talk about maybe the move up in weight. We can talk about mentality. We can talk about maybe a switch in style to maybe a more defensive style for her as well that might be accumulated all into one. And what we did see on Saturday night, and again, what we did see is a pretty comfortable one-sided fight, but at times, output wasn't quite what it used to be there. I've been critical before of fighters, so I'm going to be critical again, especially of Izzy and stuff, where it's selfish of me, but this is what I like to see in fighters. I like to see fighters trying to push for finishes, and I don't feel that we did see that with Rose. She was happy. She was in the driving seat, and she remained in the driving seat throughout the course of the 5 rounds. And I mean, one might say it was a decent performance, but if we were to compare it to maybe past Rose performances, is what I'm trying to say, might not have been the same kind of level that we would have seen in the past. And what do you think of that assessment overall, Harry?
So I think we have to be cognizant that we are not watching Rose Namajunas in her prime. I mean that both athletically, but also mentally. There was a window there for about 2 years that Rose was happy with the idea that she was a fighter. She was happy not with the idea that she was a martial artist. I think she's been a lifelong and will be a lifelong martial artist, but she was happy that she was a fighter. What do I mean by that? I mean that she is going in there with bad intentions and with the willingness and the capability and the confidence to hurt people. Not just put on beautiful technical displays, not to just go in and outpoint fighters, not to go in and prove that she is a more skilled martial artist than the person standing across from her, but to go in and actively work towards hurting another human. I don't think Rose Namajunas is there anymore. I think that what we have seen and what we saw on Saturday night is that she is still very much one of, if not the most technically brilliant fighter that we have seen in women's MMA. The way she glides along the mat, her head movement, her distance management, her footwork, the stance changes, some of the counter grappling, it's all beautiful. But there were moments in that fight where the Weili Zhang head kick could have come out. The step-in left hook against Joanna Jędrzejczyk could have come out, and it didn't. Why? It's not because it's not in her arsenal to throw it. It's not because that with moving up in weight class, I'm sure she's holding a little bit more power in those gloves. It's not because she doesn't know how to throw it or has forgotten how to throw it or has actively had from Trevor Whitman a different style or a different, a different leaning the way that she's going to be fighting. I think it's entirely mental. And now I think we have to accept that Rose Namajunas is an elite level fighter. And what do I mean by an elite level fighter? I mean challenging for a title and winning a title is gone. because at the elite level, even as technical as Rose is, you need to be willing to hurt people. And I just don't think the willingness to hurt people is inside Rose Namajunas as much as it once was. And that means, and that alone for me, and that's a big thing for me to say, given
that is like it's a big thing, because it would have been a point that I would have brought up that you've just stated there now, is that lack of fire, that hunger in your eyes. Like, you have to go out there in a kill or be killed mentality, especially at the highest level, and you have to put yourself into that dark place. For me, I don't think Rose enjoys that dark place, because I think that dark place brings her to an even darker place. And it's one that we've seen her struggle with, flirting with retirement, not maybe meeting her capabilities now. And this is a bit rich coming from a former two-time champion of the UFC strawweight division. But you're going to even have less leeway, I think, at 125. I mean, for me, I think an old mentality, Rose Namajunas with her own mentality would have probably gotten Amanda Ribas out of there on Saturday night, but we didn't see that. Is there anything that Amanda Ribas kind of did to impress you, to kind of, steer Rose away from that finish? But like I said, I think, Amanda did some of the steering. I think Rose did some of the steering away from hunting for that finish as well. But what do you take away from both of these women's performances in the main event?
So I'll start with Amanda Ribas. I think Amanda's first round and fourth round were the best rounds for her. The first round, I thought she went out and did exactly what we said she should have done. So fair play to us. And that's to go out and make it a fight, right? If you go point for point with Rose Namajunas, she's going to take you to school each and every day. And that is going to be really, 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 really difficult for you to try and win. So Ribas has tried to get in her face and land power shots as much as she possibly could. She tried to go high, she tried to go low, but the difficulty for Amanda Ribas is Rose in that first round is the fresh Rose. That's the dangerous Rose. It's the Rose that is silky, is beautiful in and out of range. It is the person that's rolling under, but she's also chunking data. And for her, that first round, she didn't gain Rose's respect. Because in the second round, Rose said, cool, I've seen the spinning back kick. I've seen the spinning elbow. I've seen the big right hand. I've seen the way that your body moves. And now I'm just going to beat you up for 2 rounds. And that's what she did, right? Rose looked great in almost all of the facets. I thought her takedown get-ups were really nice. I really loved that she punished Amanda Ribas for trying the head and arm throw, took her back and looked really good doing so. I thought that when Amanda Ribas did get to dominant positions on Rose in the fourth, she didn't do enough. In the corner, Amanda Ribas is team between 3 and 4 was saying, like, we need to go, we need to see something different. We're probably 3 rounds down here. And I thought that was her probably her best round, her most dominant round was the fourth, because again, she went back to what she did in the first and she just bit down on that mouthpiece a little bit more and proved that she can go out there and get to Rose Namajunas. But Rose Namajunas still at a technical level and the ability to make adjustments on the fly is still absolutely world class. And that 5th round was another shutout for me in terms of watching the adjustments that Ribas had made and just shutting them down again in round 5. But I completely agree with your sentiment earlier that I think a Rose Namajunas that beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, she puts Amanda Ribas out within 2 rounds comfortably too, like without even really thinking about it. And like I say, I think what we should appreciate from this performance is how good technically she can still perform. And there is a vast difference between being technically proficient and technically sound and then winning fights, right? There is absolutely a difference. We can look at somebody like Israel Adesanya and marvel at the feint game. Doesn't win him fights if he doesn't do anything with it, right? And Sean Strickland can say, those are lovely feints, I'm just going to punch you in the face and that's what's going to win me this fight. And so for Rose Namajunas, I still marvel at her footwork, her distance management, the head movement, her shot selection, the variety, the work that she can do on the ground, both from a grappling perspective and a damage perspective. But like I say, and I'll round this off again, I just don't think she's going to compete at the elite levels of 125 pounds. And that's not to say that she can't get that back, but I just don't think she will.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that you said there. And I mean, with the win, Harry, it kind of puts herself into a little bit of a sticky situation as well. Whereas that, she probably is going to have to fight once more before she gets a crack at the title. In terms of, we have the big fight that we'll be talking about later on this week between Manon Firo and Erin Blanchfield. Oh no, between Manon Firo and Erin Blanchfield, excuse me. For some reason, for a split second, I thought that was at 135, but so my mind is working right now. So where do you see the next challenge for Rose Namajunas in the division? Is it, I've seen a couple of names floating around the scene. Maybe you could fill out the potential trilogy with Jessica Andrade. There's a couple of options there at 125. What would you like to see for Thug Rose?
I want to know if she wants to fight again. Like, let her go away and have a real think about this. And does she want to fight again? Does she want to make the walk again? Does she want to do the camps again? We talked on the preview show. The preview show. We talked on the setup about how she's had 3 fights in 3 years, and she's almost 33 years of age. Like
she was on with Helwani yesterday. Now I didn't get to see too much of it now, unfortunately, but there wasn't any inclination that she was willing to step away. I think what her motivation is now, or at least what her team is trying to motivate her with, is to become a 2-weight world champion. So I think you're not going to step away after a win like that, but I can see her stepping away the next time maybe a defeat falls on her doorstep, and it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's some tough challenges up there. Obviously, she struggled against Firo after breaking the hand, so she has that to kind of fall back on. I think Erin Blanchfield's style is horrible for her, to be honest. A grinding style. I think Erin Blanchfield would probably have the strength advantage there as well. So, yeah, it'd be interesting to see. The way things are working out right now, maybe breaks in between fights is what she needs, because you need to get yourself into a certain mentality to get yourself into camp, to get yourself to the fight, and actually go out there, what you said, and hurt somebody as well. So maybe you're taking a back step, like you said, and you're waiting to see how things progress, or maybe you're a backup fighter for the title fight whenever it does happen. But yeah, interesting times. But I think we're both in agreement where there are some worries there about generally if Rose Namajunas really, really wants to fight. Does she want to fight, or does her team tell her that she still wants to fight? So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses. Any final thoughts before we move on, Harry?
I think from a stylistic perspective, if you're looking at the rankings and you want to sort of push her into a fight that she probably has a good style to win, and then the name means something, is probably Caitlin Sermonara, right? Like, Caitlin Sermonara, the point fighter, does a bit of the grappling if you want her to, but is beatable now. There is a blueprint to beat her, and I think Rose Namajunas can probably beat her, especially if you put her on a big card over 3 rounds. I would heavily favor Rose to win that fight. But yeah, I agree that I don't necessarily want to see Erin Blanchfield or I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing Manon Ferrer again, but Valentina versus Rose seems dangerous to me. Grasso versus Rose, I think technically Rose is better than Grasso, but Grasso is definitely willing to hurt you, and that's a problem for Rose. Rose definitely.
Indeed. If we were to move on to the co-main event, and if I was to give you maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute to describe what you seen in that fight, the position of that fight took up on the card, and your afterthoughts of that fight as well.
What could I even go for? Like, look, I respect the Tafa brothers. I respect the switcheroo that they did. I respect their willingness to step in on short notice and, for each other and do that thing. That's great. Neither are great fighters. Your man Carl Williams isn't a great fighter either. He just kind of knows how to put the 1s and 2s together. Overall, as a co-main event, I think it's a fucking disgrace.
It is a disgrace. I'm glad you said it, because I would have said that too. It's like, what the fuck are we doing with this fight as the co-main event? And
yeah,
look, we got what we deserved putting it there. A pretty boring decision overall. Like, and with all due respect to the Tafa brothers, if it isn't over inside 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes, the writing is pretty much on the wall for them.
100%.
And yeah, that's about as much as we'll say about that co-main event. The severe spotlight shone on Edmen Shahbazyan on Saturday night. He went out there and got a great come from behind win with a left hook, some ground and pound. Well, somewhat come from behind, I guess, but
Definitely a come from behind win.
yeah, for sure. He was looking under pressure early days here, Harry, but he pulled it out with the fire. And in my opinion, if I can be honest here, I was surprised to see him as the severe spotlight this week, if I'm going to be completely honest. But I'm going to let you justify that decision right now, good sir.
Sure. So I will give my backups, right? On the list this week was basically the whole fucking main card, really. It was Payton Talbott was there and Youssef Zalal was also there, right? The storyline for me of Youssef Zalal was he went away, he filled out a little bit, he did exactly what you want somebody that gets cut from the UFC to do. You go and win fights, you stop fights, you come back in. Payton Talbott obviously looked absolutely fantastic against Cameron Saaiman, but I feel like I need to see something a little bit more from Payton Talbott in order to, not more in his performances, but just more of him in order to write about specifically his storyline. But Edmen Shahbazyan, I think, is such a rich storyline. And what I tried to highlight in the severe spotlight is Edmen Shahbazyan grew up around one of the biggest stars in MMA. And that has its benefits, but it also has its drawbacks. Coming up around Ronda Rousey means that you get to see the beauty of the game, but also the darkness of the game. You get to see how the media attention wears on a fighter, but you get to see how well the media attention does for your stardom, for your pay packets, for this, for that, for the next thing, right? Now, obviously, Ronda Rousey to Edmen Shahbazyan is just a training partner and a friend, right? But you can't help but draw that in. And in the same vein, we saw it when the UFC signed Conor McGregor and Conor McGregor blew up. There was a number of fighters that were signed in and around the UFC or got opportunities in and around the UFC, whether it was Dana White Contender Series or otherwise, whether it was the Ultimate Fighter or otherwise. They got opportunities because of the name of Conor McGregor, and some of them weren't ready and some of them were. And we've talked ad nauseum before about how we feel like Edmen Shahbazyan maybe was pushed to the UFC a little bit too early at 20 years of age and 5-0 with 5 first-round finishes. He then goes out and has 4 more first-round finishes, 3 first-round finishes and 1 split decision to Darren Stewart. And then he goes out and he's thrown to the wolves. Nasruddin Mamavov, these types of names, and takes some hellacious beatings that you don't know whether a fighter of that age ever comes back from. And since then, the discussion around Edmen Shahbazyan has been, he was mismanaged, he was rushed by the UFC, he's never going to be what he should be, etc., etc. And maybe that's true, right? Maybe that is true. But he answered some big questions for me on Saturday night. He came in against AJ Dobson, who, AJ Dobson is not a huge name. He's certainly not going to be winning a title in his career. I understand that, but he's a tricky fighter that's got some power. And he came in and he took a massive right-hand smack in the first 2.5 minutes, gets dropped, composes himself, gets back to his feet, and then does a fantastic job at turning the tide, does a fantastic job of not being a deer in the headlights, not being timid to the exchanges, but continuing to push forward, find himself in the exchanges, ask for the exchanges with AJ Dobson, and then find his own wicked shots that put AJ Dobson down. And I think the big difference, and one of the illuminating things in that fight for me, was when AJ Dobson drops Edmen Shahbazyan, he rushes to finish. The first 2 shots after you drop a fighter are really, really important, and we'll talk about that with Payton Talbott also. Mm-hmm. Dobson missed both. So in that immediate moment where Edmen's brain is scrambling and he hits the mat and he comes back to his senses and he says, "What the fuck's going on here?" He was able to begin to wrestle. Because
just that split second to get that recovery as well. And reading back the article, severemma.com, great article as always. I think, the severe spotlight sometimes focuses on a singular performance from a fighter. I feel that reading back, and maybe you can confirm or deny this, that this was more so an accumulation of a comeback in his career and what he's been through, and an accumulation also of what he had to come back from in this fight as well. Because, you know, maybe a couple of years back when he was on the down and outs, he might have chosen to give up in that moment, but he didn't choose to give up in that moment. And I think the way he did come back and the manner he came back, he proved to himself, he proved to the fans, he proved to us that, you know, there is some fight left in the dog. And I think what we have to remember with Edmen Shahbazyan too, Harry, and what everybody has to remember is this kid is only 26 years of age. Sound like Dana White calling him a kid now, but 26 years of age. He is 13-4, with the majority of those wins and losses in his career coming in the UFC. He's had to flourish and progress in the spotlight. And you know what? Fair play, the UFC have stuck with him as well. They do see something in him, but, you know, it's still obviously a couple of red flags here and there against better level opposition. If he had been put into that position, maybe, you know, where Dobson missed those two punches, another fighter might have hit those two punches, but still, nonetheless, I'm you know, I don't get too emotionally invested in either fighter anymore, but I was very happy to see him kind of come back, because it was, oh no, here we go again, where he's gotten hurt, and it's like he shouldn't be losing this fight. But look, he did so well to come back, and I think, you know, while I say I was surprised that he got the spotlight, I definitely think it was justified for sure. And I think you gave your assessment in the article, and you did it quite well verbally there as well, to kind of give him that spotlight too.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely that every now and, or more often than not, the spotlight will just take a performance from a card, and there may be some gravity behind it. With Dustin Poirier the other week, there was gravity behind it. And I think this one specifically for Edmen Shahbazyan, you know, some people may not even know who Edmen Shahbazyan is. They may not know the history of Edmen Shahbazyan. They may not know, they see a guy that's 6-4 in the UFC, and they're like, why is this guy like third on the main card? And it's because he has a history here. There's gravity to that win. That win is not just a win over AJ Dobson on some fucking random Apex card buried in the dungeon somewhere. This is a fighter who has gone through the absolute ringer, was pushed way too quickly, and has had to contend with, what do I do here, right? Do I, like you say, give up when that going gets tough? I'm still young enough to go and find a career somewhere else or do something else. And he didn't. He stuck with MMA for better or for worse. And in that immediate moment when Dobson lands that big overhand right and drops Edmen Shahbazyan, you got to see a little bit of the more mature soul of Edmen Shahbazyan. I don't think we should be talking about Edmen Shahbazyan winning a title in this career. I think the damage is likely done for him there. But it is always important. And the roster needs people like Edmen Shahbazyan, who are willing to get dirt under their nails as they try to claw themselves, the potential of themselves, to the highest peak in, okay, not a great division at middleweight, but I think that stands to Edmen Shahbazyan, because Edmen Shahbazyan will likely at some point in his future have a ranking next to his name, whether it's, you know, between 15 and 13 is probably where we're looking. But to be able to get there, to be able to claw his way back from what was the pits of hell at a very young age, I tip my hat to him. Fair play.
Yeah, no, it's unreal. And I hope that, you know, if we're to talk about future matchups as well, let's give him another AJ Dobson style opponent. Let's cool the fucking jets here on Edmen, and give him a chance to kind of find where his ceiling is, and get settled in. I'd love to see him going on a little bit of a run in the middleweight division, and then we see you want to accumulate your 4 wins in a row, then you're starting to talk maybe rankings after that. Look at a guy who didn't get the severe spotlight, but I would say has a damn good chance, Harry, of getting the severe spotlight somewhere down the line, is Payton Talbott. And before we talk about how good he was, I want to talk a little bit about Cameron Saaiman, who sometimes in moments like this, where I would have been guilty and other people are guilty, just to throw his skill set to the side, because Cameron Saaiman is a damn good fighter. He just met a better guy on the night, and didn't really have the style or capabilities to deal with a guy like Payton Talbott. And Cameron Saaiman will be back for sure as well. But the win, the performance from Payton Talbott was it's something that gets you standing up from your seat thinking that I'm going to be seeing this guy's name quite a bit over the next couple of years, and I'm hoping that, you know, the UFC can build him into something special, because, you know, we all ask ourselves, and we're always looking for who's going to be the next big thing or the next big talent. It's performances like this, Harry, that stand out from maybe other performances or maybe even other experienced guys. The calmness, the coolness, the shot selection, the patience, the coolness, the calmness, and the killer instinct, as you said, as well. It was sensational from Payton Talbott.
I agree. I mean, I will start by saying I think Cameron Saaiman would do well to, and maybe he won't, but at still whatever he is, 21 or 22 years of age and still so young in his career, I do think if he was to be cut from the UFC, it would not be the worst thing for him, because in the division that he is in, there is 0 easy fights. Payton Talbott is an entry-level fight still at this point, is an entry-level fight for Cameron Saaiman. And when you have skills like Payton Talbott at the absolute entry level of this division, you have to be a very, 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 very good fighter to survive. And I think Cameron Saaiman has the opportunity to be a very, 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 very good fighter. But as of today, he is not. And I do not want to see something similar like Edmen Shahbazyan, where he continues and continues and continues, and the UFC puts more and more and more into him because he's young, because he can talk, because he looks the part, etc., etc. And we lose another prospect, right? But anyway, on to Payton Talbott. I was blown away, frankly. I was blown away. He's only 25, right? Still young enough in his career, but it feels as though the things that he needs to fix are small, incremental experience leaps rather than massive gaping holes in his game. I was a little concerned at the end of the first, with about 25, 40 seconds left to go, that he had punched himself out a little bit and had really, really, really tried to get that finish, and Cameron Saaiman had stayed strong. But that minute between rounds, and he came out and landed that absolute screamer of a left hand, and I was like, all right, fair play, ignore me.
Yeah, it's like that recovery time that you can, where, or maybe his like lack of really letting loose maybe in that situation as well, which proves, you know, that fight IQ is there, that understanding of his capabilities are there. All of these are little small things that, you know, we'll talk about the exterior things. Oh, he threw that punch well, or he set that punch up well, but there's so many small little intricacies that are involved in there. Knowing when to punch, trying to, you know, not allow your opponent to get your read on this kind of, you know, forward movement that you're having, or your combination that you're throwing. So you're throwing 2-punch combination, then you're throwing a 3-punch combination, then you're throwing a 5-punch combination. All those little small things that he seems to have at a very early stage, which that's what gets me excited. You know, obviously what you said is the thing that will need to happen, is that more in-cage experience against higher level opposition, where you are, you know, it's easy to go out there and be the hammer. Sometimes you're going to have to be the nail out there. So I think I don't make my full assessment on fighters, and I would have to say, even somewhat, like I use Ian Garry as an example. We've only seen him hurt minimal times, but we haven't really truly seen him the nail there and seen if he has the mentality to kind of claw himself back like Edmen Shahbazyan did. We can talk about that with Payton Talbott too. Obviously undefeated, no one has been able to kind of test him. Some in the UFC, somewhat. Like, I mean, Nick Aguirre was a good win over him. Saaiman didn't really test him; he was just a little bit outmatched. And we'll find those questions out. But like, what we can do is we can assess what we've seen, and we can assess his capabilities that he's acquired so far. But his ceiling appears to be a hell of a lot higher. And I mean, he ticked off a hell of a lot of boxes on Saturday night, didn't he, Harry?
Yeah, certainly did. I think the thing that impressed me the most, right, is he throws everything he has in his arsenal immediately. Like, right out of the gate, he shows you absolutely everything, and then he just sees what works. And then he hones in and hones in and hones in. And the things that were working were the knee, obviously, right? Obviously. That check left hook and the big overhand right. And so instead of just saying, okay, I've got 3 weapons and I'm just going to use those 3 weapons, he goes back to the jab. He goes back to the footwork. He goes back to the side to side. He leads with the jab, but he knows this right hand is working, my check left hook is working, and my knee is working. And so those are the things I'm going to build the next 4 minutes around, and potentially the next 10 minutes after that, right? I'm not going to rush. I'm going to keep hammering. I'm going to keep finding. I'm going to keep chipping my way out. But I have realized the things that are going to work. And I am sure, I say I'm sure, I shouldn't be sure, but I am relatively confident that if Cameron Saaiman had made some adjustments and maybe shut down the knee or shut down the check left hook, that Payton Talbott would say, okay, well, what else is going to work? And he starts throwing things back out again and testing again and then making a readjustment again.
I think a little bit of that inexperience from Saaiman as well kind of created that inability for him to shut that stuff down, because we were surprised with the level of performance. And look, at sometimes when you're in there, I've had the unfortunate circumstance of being in there with somebody that you can't figure out too, and it's not a nice feeling. But Cameron Saaiman showed his toughness taking that knee. It was crazy. But I mean, like, that comes with experience for Cameron Saaiman as well. And a more experienced person might be able to maybe close the distance. If it's not working for you in that distance range, you close the distance, you make it dirty. And it's rather than, I feel that the mistake that Saaiman made, and look at this one that he'll learn from, is that he played the dance. He played to the dance of Payton Talbott, and he played to it a little bit too much. And yes, he did try and take it down, but the setups weren't really there, and Talbott was sprawling well, and he kind of ran out of ideas after that. But my goodness, he took that knee like an absolute champ, and I would not have been too disappointed if the fight had been called in between rounds. But the writing was, I don't think he had recovered properly from that knee coming into round 2, and the straight left to the ground and pound was that was it. And I think it was a very good stoppage, and a timely stoppage where there wasn't too much over damage, is what I would call, from the initial kind of punch and ground and pound.
I think the finish was fine, but he took such a beating.
Before that though. Yeah, before that.
Like, that round is a 10-8 every single day in a week and twice on a Sunday. Do you know what I mean? Like, that is a absolute fucking beatdown from Payton Talbott. But, I can't take anything away from Cameron Saaiman's toughness. I just wish that we didn't have to see it this early in his career.
Yeah, no, that is a very fair point. Look, we're talking about Cameron Saaiman getting cut and coming back. That's what happened with Youssef Zalal. And he did come back, and he looked very good against a tricky Billy Quarantillo. I was very impressed with Zalal when he was first in the UFC, having seen his debut against Ilia Topuria at that time. And, I was bigging him up. I was giving him his kudos, and it didn't really work out. It had me questioning myself, to be honest. But I think I had a lot more reassurance when I seen him back. And experience and time can be your best friend sometimes in the fight game. And I think that's exactly what we've seen with Youssef Zalal on Saturday night, not making the same rushed errors. Like you mentioned something in the last fight, or a previous fight, I think it was with Payton Talbott, he didn't rush anything. And that can be like when you're in there and you're in that like level of combat, you can get excitable, you can rush things, and that can be your detriment. I think that happened a lot with Youssef Zalal, especially in the scramble exchanges, sometimes with his shots as well, where he was overextending in his first UFC tenure. We saw a lot more composed and in control Youssef Zalal on Saturday night, and the results were pretty entertaining to watch.
I was super impressed. We came in and we said that Billy Q was a tough fight on short notice, high octane, high action fighter, always pushing the pace, gets in your face quite a lot. And we said, if Youssef Zalal wasn't on his P's and Q's, then that style from Billy Quarantillo can be a real issue, right? It can be a really a struggle to deal with. I thought Youssef Zalal looked fantastic. Immediately after the first 2.5 minutes, it felt like those first 2.5 minutes, he was a little inactive. I think there was a few nerves there. He was feeling 100%. Out of cage again. He was like, oh, fuck, I'm here now. This fella is in my face and he is doing the things and whatever. And then he hit a lovely trip, and he absolutely went to town on the combinations. They were beautiful. I thought the back take was fantastic. He worked really, really hard on trying to sink in that short choke to begin with, and obviously didn't get what he wanted the first time of asking. But that second round, he was like, oh, no, I'm back. I'm here. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm here for. This is fine. This fella's got absolutely fucking nothing for me, and I'm just going to go out there and murder him, man. And the trip to the takedown, to the back take, to the finish was just absolutely...
It was lovely. Peter Yan, eat your heart out. It's the same trip that Peter Yan has used time and time again. You know, that old-fashioned push on the chest, sweep the leg, and he created that scramble to create that finish, and it was very, very impressive. I'm excited to see. Look, it's still work to do. Let's be real. You know, there is still work to do, but that's a good return to the UFC as anyone. And I mean, in the featherweight division, we got some options for him. He's only 27. You know, the unfortunate thing for him here is he's already came in and kind of taken on a name at 145. Although Quarantillo isn't ranked, he's very well known, having come through the Ultimate Fighter and everything like that. So I wouldn't be too upset if we see a kind of a same level of opponent, if not even maybe a more well-rounded, lesser-known opponent here. We don't want to be shooting up Zalal too quickly again this time. Like, I mean, the man took on Ilia Topuria in his last UFC debut, so let's cool the jets on him and let him kind of find his feet within the division. Any names stick out at all for Zalal?
I mean, it does depend on what you want to do with him. Like, do you fancy Nathaniel Wood?
I do fancy that. I do fancy that quite a bit, actually. That's a great fight.
I like that fight a lot.
Let's do it in London or wherever they're having that pay-per-view in England in the summer.
Let's do
it.
The other name is Alex Caceres. Like, you could do an Alex Caceres type fight where...
And then you're teetering on the edge of the rankings with that one too, though.
Fight though, innit? Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's a great fight. I'd love to see it. Yeah, no, I like the two of those. It'd be interesting to see. I'm glad to see Youssef back in the UFC. And yeah, we'll move on. 145 again for Fernando Padilla versus UF's Pajuelo. 145, it was finished by a Darce choke early in round one. Harry, were you impressed by the Mexican?
Yeah, look, standing Darces aren't something that you see very often. Padilla has that very, very long frame that would certainly make it nice and simple for him to start looking for those Darces. But I just think this kid, he just cracks. Like, he gets hit a bit. He took a few right hands in this fight, but he just has a thudding type of striking. The snappy teep, that just brutalizes people's midriff. The low kick is thudding. And when he cracks you with the left or the right, frankly, it just looks like it really, really fucking hurts. And he dropped his man here nicely, followed up with some really, really heavy ground and pound. Fair play to his opponent, who did his best to get back to his feet, but he just found himself immediately in a DARS, and the tap came quick, which tells you that, you know, and this is not uncommon, right? It's not something I'm shocked by, a fella with long arms being good at a DARS. Like, I'm not shocked in the slightest. But yeah, I think Padilla, if he's going to make something of a name for himself in this division, we're going to need to stop getting cracked by those right hands all the time. And we're going to have to stop being so confident in our ability to take shots and land shots. But he's a fun fighter. And I was impressed with the performance.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, it was enough for him to earn a bonus on a night that there was some pretty standout action. So fair play to him on that, and looking forward to seeing what's next with him. Talk to me about Holobaugh versus Trey Ogden. Nothing really too much to write home about this. Did you see anything from this matchup at all that tickled your fancy?
Look, all I'll say is there were 3 takedowns in this fight. That's all you need.
That's it.
Ogden took Holobaugh down 3 times. Holobaugh couldn't get back up. That's what you want. Ogden did enough work on top. He landed enough damage, had enough control time to win the rounds. Fair play. Holobaugh, unable to get back up. That's how you win MMA fights. Like, if you're Trey Ogden, that's how you win MMA fights. First round was a complete shutout. Second round, Holobaugh did a little bit better on the feet, and Trey Ogden was like, fuck it, I need to get this down. Gets it down, keeps it down. Fine, no problem. Next round, does the same thing. Fine, no problem. Like, At the end of the day,
If it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of a job, wasn't it?
Right. MMA is about winning, and Kurt Holobaugh and Trey Ogden are not going to be winning titles ever, right? And so if you're Trey Ogden or you're Kurt Holobaugh, whoever it is, you might be on 50 and 50 if you're lucky, you know? So you go in there and you win your fucking fight. That's what you do. And fair play to him.
Yeah, he got the job done. Obviously, after coming back, that last fight must have been a disappointment for it. It was a premature stoppage, but he got in there, beat last year's tough winner in Kurt Holobaugh. Fair play to him for that. Moving on, Harry, Julian Erosa was absolutely robbed of a performance bonus, if you ask me. I don't know how he didn't get it. It was such a nice finish from a real savvy veteran of almost over 40 fights now at this stage, and he's somewhere underrated. Like it seems like what way can I do? I'm just going to go for it the way I'm thinking about it. It seems like Julian Erosa is put into these type of fights to lose. And sometimes he goes and he does lose, but sometimes he pulls off performances like this that are just super, super impressive. And he had the motivation of a new child that's come into his world, obviously a kid. Him and his missus had a kid, so that obviously got the juices flowing for motivation and everything. And he came in with and took the bull by the horns and got a lovely finish, Harry.
I am going to disagree here. I think that this is Ricardo Ramos failing dramatically with his fight IQ. Like, he hurts Julian Erosa, drops him badly, right? And then follows him down and is like, "Do you want to do close guard stuff? Like, what are we doing?" And then immediately goes, and as soon as the reset happens, doesn't then go back to the thing that dropped Julian Erosa to begin with. He shoots a takedown. What the fuck are we doing? Like, what the fuck are we doing? You've hurt him on the feet. You've landed some lovely leg kicks. You've landed some big strikes up top, and you've tried to take the cunt down. Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what the fuck are we doing? If you're Ricardo Ramos and I'm in your corner, we get to the back of the fight and I'm going to guillotine you again in the locker room just for being a fucking idiot. Like,
it's 2 in a row now for Ramos, and
it's so frustrating.
Yeah, lost by guillotine choke to Charles Jourdain in his last fight. Same in this fight as well against Julian Erosa. Like, fair play. I'm still going to give Erosa his dues after coming back from that, but
jumping on a guillotine and finishing it is so hard in MMA. It is so hard. And he made a beautiful adjustment because he was losing the crown of the head.
He was. It looked like Ramos was slipping out, but he kind of tucked himself in a little bit. I mean, I don't want to butcher the explanation. You can probably explain it much better than what I can.
Sure. So what he did, which was very, very, very pretty, was to finish the guillotine. It's quite a technical thing that you need lots and lots of components to it. One of the things that Julian Erosa had is he had his feet locked on the far hip. That locking of the far hip allows you to side crunch more, i.e. closing your elbow down towards your hip, and it allows you to bring your hands towards your chin and your chin towards your hands at the same time you engage your core in order to get that chin to chest connection for your partner to actually get the choke. What Erosa was doing was as he dived for it, gravity had started to pull him back over the crown of Ricardo Ramos's head. Obviously, Ramos was doing his best to try and, shorten his neck and try and get his head out of that choke. But what Julian Erosa did is he re-wrapped his feet very quickly over the hip and back-heeled enough that it basically did a sit-up so that he could reattach himself. And it was, 5 inches worth, 4 inches worth max. And he just allowed himself to take that crown of his head back under his lat and back under his tricep and get a full squeeze. And it's that tiny adjustment that wins that fight. Because
Go ahead.
All I'm going to say is if he doesn't make that adjustment, Ricardo Ramos slips out of that choke.
Yeah, absolutely. It was that close, and he was squeezing for it. Like, he knew that this was it. This is my opportunity to win this fight. And I'm going to give him that credit again. Fair play to him. I mean, yeah, he's not going to be going too many places, but he definitely dug that one out. And serious, I have to agree with you too. Serious IQ issue for Ricardo Ramos. Let's blast through the next couple real quick. Quick thoughts on Miles Johns versus Cody Gibson, Harry.
I think Miles Johns is just genuinely a really, really tough type of fighter to fight if you're not a really, really, really good level fighter. And that may sound really, really horrible, but that's how I feel about it, frankly. Like, I think Miles Johns is built like a fire hydrant. He hits hard. He's tough to get the respect of. He can do a bit of everything. And so if you're not a really, 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 really good fighter, you're going to struggle against him. And it was just a picture perfect Miles Johns performance, frankly.
It was, and what I was impressed by with that performance was I think Cody Gibson prepared himself excellently, and on paper, you know, you're talking about this big hitter in Miles Johns, a guy who does load up, and Cody Gibson, who is like a lot more of a stick and move style fighter, a little bit more technical, I would say, than Miles Johns. But I thought what Cody Gibson didn't prepare for is Miles Johns closing the distance and making it a little bit dirty whenever he needed to, and that opened up the striking for him a little bit better. So, you know, yeah, Miles Johns is one of these kind of guys who's going to be there or thereabouts in the position that he's in. Never an easy fight, and always a good litmus test. And Gibson will be disappointed that he didn't get that. It was a unanimous decision win from Miles Johns there. Moving on to the fight of the night, Jarno Errens versus Stephen Nguyen. Jesus, this was a bona fide banger of a fight and justified getting performance of the night for both of these gentlemen. I was really impressed with Errens in this fight, and I tell you, Nguyen came in there and you know, he fought back well, but you know, Errens, it was kind of like momentum. Errens started well, then Nguyen came back, and then Errens had to kind of push forward, which makes obviously for a fight of the night kind of style fight, and that's exactly what we got in this one, Harry.
Unbelievable fight. Fantastic from both of them. There's nothing else that we can add. Just both fighters went out, and it was very funny. Like, Errens at the very, very start put his palm out for the glove touch, and your man didn't touch his glove. He just hit him with a left hook, and Errens shook his head like, "You bastard," and then was like, "Fuck it, I'm going to gear 5 straight away. Fuck you, we're having it now. Like, we're fucking having it."
Yeah.
All right, fair play. What do you want me to say? Like, that's fucking savage all around. And so yeah, I was very, very impressed with Errens. It seems as though Errens has to get. I'm going to make a wild statement. Errens, the way he fights reminds me of Dustin Poirier in that he starts well, gasses, gets hurt, and then finds a second wind and does really well. Like that.
Yeah, no, I can see that. That's a very good analysis there as well. And that's exactly what happened in this one. Is he kind of died it off a little bit in the second round. And obviously Nguyen had to come back and obviously take back that second round after a bad first round. But yeah, I thought, you know, that where you really show your true colors is the ability for Errens to come back. Because was he going to allow Nguyen to kind of take over the fight? No, he wasn't. And I think
No, he was not.
That battle made it a fight of the night material for sure.
Yes,
Montserrat, Rendon versus Darya, Zheleznyakova. Your thoughts on this one? A unanimous decision. Not a great fight, if we're being honest here, Harry, isn't it? Not.
No, it was a close fight too. It was
a close, but not really great quality.
No, not great quality at all.
I think that's about as much as we'll say about
That's what you're getting. I'm not giving you any more than that.
Not too right, because we're out here, Harry. We're out here in the year of our Lord 2024, biting people. We're out here biting people inside the UFC octagon right now. And as an MMA purist, as a guy that loves and adores the analytical and the technical side and what these guys and women put in on a week-to-week basis for our entertainment, we're out here biting people in the 2024, and I'm very, very curious to hear what your thoughts are.
So I have two sides to this, right? Firstly, I think the right call was made. I saw some stuff online about, it shouldn't have been a DQ. What the fuck are you talking about? Like,
who was saying that? Who was saying that?
What are we fucking doing? Like, you bitter fella. I think that this fight was riddled with cheating. riddled. Whether it
Yeah,
was
serious amount of
fingers
fence grabs
inside
as well.
gloves, fence grabs, short pulling. It was fucking riddled with.
Tyone did a horrible job on the fence
Horrific.
grabs. And it seems to be a common trend that we're having a lot of these style of fights when he's reffing. And, we criticize Mark Goddard for sometimes being the school principal and laying down the law in there. But I think, when we see fights like this and we see the mass amount of fouls that were taking place, I think it's important to know when you need to step in and lay down the law a little bit. And, maybe it was somewhat, look, there's no excuse for biting anyone inside the cage, to be honest, but there would have been probably inklings of frustration there from Igor Severino. Maybe, that the fight wasn't handled the way he would have liked it being handled. Lima was looking to try and grab the fence, like I said, on multiple occasions, which probably created a little bit more frustration. And ultimately, a bite is not the answer, my friend. A bite is not the answer. You go and you got to hit him in the face, you got to break his nose, and you got to make him bleed, but you cannot be going out there and biting motherfuckers in 2024. In any year, it's not even if it's any of the previous years, you can't be going out and biting. In UFC 1, Harry, you would have been disqualified for biting somebody. We can't be doing that shit.
No, I agree. And look, I think I have nothing but no excuse for it. I think the only thing I will say, and this is, I've been vocal about my displeasure with MMA and how close I've come to giving up covering it on this, as a sport over the past little while. And nothing actually pains me more about this specific instance than to see the UFC posting a graphic and awarding a fighter $50,000 for bite of the night. And I'm just going to explain exactly why that frustrates me. One, why are we celebrating an illegal infraction? That's the first thing. Second thing, why are we awarding? If you want to award a fighter and say, look, I'm really sorry that this happened to you, and this is absolutely not something that we condone, etc., that's absolutely fine. Do it behind closed doors. And then it is likely that Ariel Helwani or somebody similar will pick up an interview with this fella after he gets it tattooed on his arm to talk about it. That's their job. He can then say, look, the UFC, fair play to them, amazing company. They really looked after me. They gave me some cash in the background to say, like, this is not what we condone. We're really sorry this happened, blah, 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 blah. But to make it a gimmick, to make it essentially to make it a meme, I think is disgraceful. And there are other fighters on that card who, you said Julian Erosa, why is he not getting a performance of the night bonus? He's not getting a performance of the night bonus because some fella decided to bite a cunt, and the UFC decided there and then in the truck to turn that into, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to make this a thing and we're going to give him 50 grand for it. MMA is not a sport. Like, it's just not a fucking sport,
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. I cringed for the life of me too when I saw that bite of the night. But as a tattoo enthusiast, as a guy that does have the majority of his body tattoo,
horrible.
You didn't even let me finish. Not a fan of the bite mark tattoo. Then no,
horrible, absolutely fucking heinous stuff. Like,
let's move on, shall we? Before Harry absolutely explodes at the thought of that tattoo, and we move on to the first fight of the night in the heavyweight division: Mick Parkin versus Muhammad Usman. Your thoughts on the performance? Another close fight. I agreed with the judges. I think I had round 1 for Usman, rounds 2 and 3 for Parkin, I believe, and I think the win, even though it was a close one, it was a justified one. Harry.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said there. I was impressed with Mick Parkin, to be honest. Usman, somebody that hits hard. We saw that in the opening round. And it was basically just one flurry that won that opening round for Muhammad Usman. He managed to land a jab and then landed a 4 or 5 punch combination before Mick Parkin circled off the side of the fence. But look, I think Parkin is a tidy fighter, right? Has some okay head movement, has a nice jab, can clearly do a little bit of the anti-grappling and stuff. He's definitely not going to set the heavyweight world on fire. He absolutely, you can see why he's a fantastic training partner for somebody like Tom Aspinall, because he's tough. He can do a bit. He's at a very, very good level whereby he can come in and take a fight on short notice against a guy like Muhammad Usman and get a win. But I think there are some things that are severely lacking in the game of McParkin. One is athleticism, the other is dynamism, the other one is shot variety, and the last one and the most important one at heavyweight is big power, right? Like, I am sure when he hits you, it hurts, but there were moments in there where he is landing 4, 5, 6, 7 shots on Muhammad Usman, and Usman doesn't even look like he's phased. You know, that's a problem at heavyweight, because as we start adding names into the McParkin resume as we climb up the rankings, he's going to need power in order to gain respect of people. And if he doesn't have it, and he might prove me wrong, right? He might prove me wrong. He's still young enough in his career that maybe this is him just settling his feet in the UFC, getting as many minutes as possible and really, really getting the experience that he feels like he needs. But it doesn't feel as though he's got massive power. And
and I think in this one as well, sorry for interrupting, I feel, you know, when he got clipped a little bit, it looked like he got wobbled a little bit in the first round by Usman, which can make you maybe a little bit tentative to overcommit and to throw at 100% as well. But I do agree. Like, I mean, do you think that can develop for McParkin in some ways? I mean, you know, a little bit of extra technique can bring a little bit more power, but like sometimes you either have it or you don't have it, and it'll be interesting to see. But a good win for Parkin overall, Harry. Who would you like to see next for him?
I mean, I'm just gonna answer the first question first. Like, he has been finishing people outside of the UFC, right? He has been finishing people, and we must remember that he's still only 9 fights into his MMA career. He's never lost. He didn't lose at amateur, and he's not lost now. He's had good names on his record, especially outside. In his amateur career, he took a win over Ryan Spillane, and we know what that means at amateur, right? He was a very, very good amateur fighter. And he didn't see the third round, didn't see a decision until he got to the UFC. So I'm certainly not saying that, you know, he's not a finisher, he can't finish fights, etc., etc. I'm just saying that as and when he gets to the upper echelons, if he gets there, then we're going to need to see some more finishes from McParkin. In terms of who do we do next, I really think that depends. Like, I wouldn't mind a name like a Blagoy-Ivanov or an Augusto Sakai type name, maybe a Sakai type name who isn't a big hitter but will do the grappling, and we'll get to see a little bit more of whether he can actually grapple or not. Other than that, I don't really want to do this, but you could feed him an Andrei Arlovsky on the London card. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could do something like that.
I don't even think he's ready for an opponent like that yet. Like, because that's the kind of you put guy in with Andrei Arlovsky if you're ready to give him that push up the rankings. I don't think Parkin is there. He's young, especially young for a heavyweight too. So let's give him time. Let's give him time to develop, and we'll see what happens. But definitely want to put him on that UK card that is going to be happening in the summer. I think that's the right spot for him right now. And that's the right spot for us to wrap it up for the balance breakdown this week. It's been a pleasure as always. A decent card overall, it has to be said. Lots of solid fights on it, lots of good action, lots of talking points. And we'll be back in a couple of days to talk about the UFC Atlantic City card, some of the best. So take care until then. Hit the likes, hit the subscribe button, share with a friend. Follow Harry at BJJ_Harry Powell, and follow me at O'Neill MMA. Good luck.